And we're live. I'm here with my friend Sammy. Sammy, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing, Caleb?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Happy to you are the 99th episode of my show. So
Nice.
I have you. And be listening. Tomorrow night will be the 100th episode. So make sure you stick around, subscribe, like, comment, share, all that good stuff. And then tomorrow night will be the 12-hour live stream. So it's gonna be a lot of fun.
It's gonna be a lot of effort.
I got a bunch of Red Bulls. I got like a list of things to do, and if all those fails, I'm gonna stream Bioshock and scream like a bitch in front of the camera. So I think it'll be fine. But we're gonna be doing a book club today on the Bitcoin Standard by Saifuddin Moose. Did I say it?
Yeah.
I gotta say this is another example of where the paperback looks fine, but the hardcover, simple and black, but with gold lettering. I mean, come on. That looks so much nicer on a shelf. So, what do you know about Bitcoin before we get into the actual book itself? Like, what do you know about Bitcoin?
Interestingly, I think Bitcoin's what got me into like economics, not the other way around. Which is a little odd. I'd heard about it in like the whole 2017 fanatic, like when it was going up to like 20K. There's like this nerd I knew who wore a Discord hat, no lie, talking about it like he'd mine Bitcoin on his computer or something. And I was like, what the heck is this guy talking about? But I don't know. I was listening to like investing podcasts like a couple of years ago, and this guy always would be talking about it. I'm like, why are you talking about this weird like magical internet money? But it sounded interesting, and honestly, there's like kind of like the fear of missing out aspect. So I just looked up Bitcoin books, and this is like the first one that came up, and it's actually what like introduced me to, like Mises and stuff.
Wow, you got a good book for introduction, because his when he goes through like Mises, Rothbard, goes on a bit of a critique of Hayek, goes into like critique of Friedman. Like this is like the first half of this book was just like I saw a great Austrian economic, and then he really sums up a lot of like Mises stuff on like socialism and that kind of stuff really well. I was honestly kind of listening to this book today. I'm like, this is a book on Bitcoin, but I'm really enjoying like the standard economic side of it. And considering how popular this book is, it really makes me happy. I kind of these ideas are
definitely
popular like that.
Mm-hmm. I remember like, I mean, I kind of didn't know who most of the names were. So coming back, I was like, I didn't know you mentioned Hoppe like 8 times in the book.
Yeah.
I just like skimmed over that. I guess I listened to the audiobook when I originally listened to it, and I like miss a lot of stuff because, but yeah, I mean, it's great. It's just like the first half is just like a history of money. It's great. I like how it's very historical and not just here's Bitcoin.
Absolutely. It's the history side of things. Like, my favorite thing of economics is like monetary stuff. I love like history of money and how money works. Like one of my favorite Rothbard books is either What Is Government Done to Our Money or History of Money and Banking.
Yeah,
I love both those books.
I think I'm the same way.
They're great books. And so it was really fun when he started going into like the deep dives of history of money. I was like, yeah, this is the shit. I was hoping for this. But before we go deeper into the book, let's just kind of lay some ground things out. Like, what is money? Me remember listening to not know what money is. I think it's this great example. I was trying to talk to my mom about inflation and see this. He put up a dollar bill and went, but it says 1 on it, so it always means it's $1. I'm like, no.
It's 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. That's a meme.
So, what is money? Because I know you're like an economist type guy. So, can you maybe explain to the audience?
Yeah, I mean that's really the question this book tries to answer. There's an entire podcast show like by a Bitcoin guy called Robert Breedlove called "What Is Money?" That's like the whole name, and he'll do like 20-hour interviews just on that question. I mean, that's what the first, I think, 3 chapters of the book is talking about. And it's basically the idea of, the Misesian or Mengerian, I guess, Karl Menger of the Austrian school was probably the first one to really write about it, was that money is not like a state-made fiat or like just like a thing created by a government. It is like a spontaneous order of people acting in their self-interest. So the idea is that through the division of labor, you need to trade with others. Like I have eggs, you have bread, and I want some of what you have, and you want some of what I have. But what you'll bump into is both you need the double coincidence of want and scalability issues. So say I want like a shoe, but I can't find, and I only have eggs. I can't find anyone with a shoe that wants my eggs. And maybe like the ratios don't match up. So it's very awkward, and it makes trade very difficult. So what people would tend to do as a society develops is find a good that people generally like to accept, a general medium of exchange. So maybe that's, I don't know, cows in an area where that's like a really valuable good. So what could happen is people start acquiring those goods, not for their own consumption, but because they know that it's a liquid or exchangeable good. And then as that happens, that good starts to develop a value, not just as its like consumption value, but because people know, oh, people accept this, therefore I want to grab onto it because it gives me the option of like liquidity or flexibility. And then it kind of like takes on a life of its own as a money. And there's certain traits that, you know, make something more likely to be money. Like wheat is not going to be great money because it'll just like go bad, or I don't know, whatever happens to wheat, or it's like very hard to carry around enough. So there's certain traits that he goes through that make a better money.
Yep, absolutely. It's I think one of the things is like one of the problems today is people don't view money as a spontaneous thing. I know some people when asking to define money, and they just go whatever the centralizing power at B has money for people, makes law for people. You have to accept this as money. So that inherently the definition of money is whatever the state says this is the money you have to accept. That becomes money, and then you have no concept of like trade or good or money outside of what government institute has currency. What I think we would call that well, not inherently. It's not government institutes are inherently fiat, but they most often happen to be fiat.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, it is interesting. It is a hard thing to grasp, especially in our world. Like someone like Warren Buffett is really opposed to gold. He's like, why would I spend all this effort digging something out of the ground, like building it into a little shiny rock? And it's like the rock doesn't do anything. And now what? That rock is going to be traded for something valuable. So it almost is counterintuitive, especially when you're not used to it, when we're so used to just basically our money is just a representation of value. It's not value itself. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, absolutely. You cut out for a little bit right there, like why when you start a sentence.
Get the mic closer to me.
Yeah, I mean like you froze up, the whole camera froze up and stuff.
Okay.
This could be the internet problems. The storm is dying down, so it might be on my end. If you could just, if you want to like say the sentence again or start over again, because I got the tail end of that. And I think the first part maybe needs to be said as well. So if you could.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard for people to basically, what is the point of money, or like, why does it have value? Because it doesn't have a consumption end in and of itself. Money is the only thing that doesn't fall into a consumption good or an investment good, and investment goods lead to consumption. So it's kind of like this weird enigma, and especially when we're so used to a fiat world, it can be hard to understand why would I need money when I could like invest in something.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into the book. So it kind of goes through a lot of history of money. We kind of define what money is and give some examples. I think my favorite example of money being used is either I can't remember what it was, the island that had the giant limestones.
Mm-hmm.
Or and that was currency because they were hard to move and there were only so many of them and stuff like that. People could just go, okay, this is the money. People will keep track of it. And I think it was Virginia that used tobacco as currency in the early American days, which I think is just hilarious to me. That tobacco was money. I love it. It's like prison times. Everyone needs cigarettes.
Yeah, the cigarette currencies, those are fun as well.
Yeah. But yeah, any particular examples from the historical section in the book you want to go deeper on for the podcast?
I do really like the Yap stones. I forget what it is. I think that's the name. I think it's very interesting because I think a stone in his example of it doesn't actually have a use value ever. Like people argue that gold only could become money because people could use it for jewelry. Like that's what Peter Schiff always says. But like I don't know. I don't think these stones are used anything other than the stones existing. Like, and I mean, I don't know if it's clout or what, but it's very interesting that the money could develop. And also, I found it very interesting, like the example of that explorer who basically came and just drastically increased the supply of these rocks using like explosives, and then suddenly the tribe leader was like, no, we're not going to accept these because they were too easy to get, basically. And then that just crashes the currency, so to speak, because suddenly the scarcity's gone. So,
Yeah,
so it's
that
very
king was
interesting,
smarter
like
than the people.
technology destroying monies.
Mhm.
It's interesting.
Yeah, that king was definitely smarter than his people because they all accepted that money because like, oh, it's small money, and the king was like, this is gonna crash the economy. He knew.
Yeah, it just
Very
takes
early
one
proto
bad
Austria.
actor, though. Yeah, so
Yeah.
so hard.
So we have like natural coin money that we talked about. What exactly is fiat? Like how do you define what fiat money is?
So fiat, I would say, I mean, it's like by decree is the literal definition. So it's basically like some powerful force, generally a state, saying, by decree, we're saying that you will accept this as money. I mean, there's legal tender laws in basically every country, so you have to accept dollars for your services. You're not allowed to. Like, you couldn't open a store that only accepted gold, and you can pay your taxes in them. So that's, I guess, some utility. And I mean, government like supports kind of like the infrastructure for like a fiat system.
He actually, I'm gonna save the talking point for later. Actually, he goes through World War One, World War Two, the disaster effect World War One, World War Two had on money, and he goes into some points about like the what was it called, the Bretton Woods Agreement on gold and the U.S. and the moving away from gold to fiat currency, and how the U.S. Dollar was going to be basically the reserves of the entire country.
Yeah, the entire world. Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Sorry. I thought it was very interesting. I really think that is it's strategically it makes sense for them to want to go that route, but economically it was just a really bad move. What seems to be what the left's great at: economically terrible decisions and then great strategic thinkers.
Well, I mean, it was good for the elites in the United States. It's definitely like, I mean, it's a very complicated topic. And also, one thing I want to like correct from what I said earlier is that I don't think like any fiat system has just been put in place like out of nothing, because what is a dollar? You know, like it would be very arbitrary, like what a dollar is set at. Generally, a fiat system like is an outgrowth of a commodity money. So like a dollar was $35 per ounce of gold, but then slowly that was eroded, and then eventually you jumped off, like we lost the peg, but we kind of kept the prices as if there was a peg. So it's not that it was created out of nothing. It's kind of like a slow fall. Like you kind of need like the base of like a real money system. If that makes sense.
That's a good point. We kind of glossed over that part. Because I mean, the U.S. dollar is just has that same thing calls it a shit coin. Which I absolutely love the Bitcoin lingo, man. I love it. Shit coin. It's just I love it.
Yeah, not gonna make it. Have fun staying poor. All those agreements.
So let's kind of go into the effects fiat money has had, specifically fiat money and inflation effect. I think this is kind of so why these things are terrible and seeing the effect they've had on things. I think here's a great chapter that I was not expecting, was the effect fiat money had on art. Well, that was just a chapter. Once he brought that up, once he like said the entire chapter, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit down, like slow the speed down, really listen to this one, because like the destruction of art has been like a big hobby horse of mine to like follow, and I don't know why, but never really into my mind to track, hey, how does fiat money affect this? And it was very interesting to see him kind of go into that about how government pushing shit art to basically fuck with the Westerners during the Cold War is just I knew that, but I didn't think how that was really possible without, so the use of like printing money really wouldn't have been possible. And so it is kind of an interesting detail he brings up.
Yeah, you would really like his second book, because his second book's the fiat standards. So the entire book is like those 2 chapters. So I think he has like 1 or 2 whole chapters on fiat art and then like fiat food and all that. So
Fiat
that's
food. Yeah, I'm gonna just add it to my list real quick on the fiat standard, because that definitely sounds interesting. There we go. But yeah, I mean, the effect fiat money has on the family, the effect has on marriage rates and marital strides, the effect it has on, I mean, literally, it like everything. It seems to ruin a lot. Like all the good things about society or culture, it seems to be affected and hurt by this the economic problem that stem from the creation and mass producing of printable fiat money.
Yeah, I mean, once government has full control of the money, in the fact that it's not backed by anything other than their own printer, they basically can, co-opt as much of the economy as they want. So in essence, they could make the economy 99% socialist by just like times 100ing the money supply and then just devoting, you know what I mean? So it's like they can basically siphon as many resources from the rest of the economy as they want, and they can siphon it in ways they want. Like they can just print money and subsidize, like pro LGBT companies, and then suddenly the economy is prioritizing those and not out of any like preference. It's just the way the printing goes.
Yeah. His point about how the Keynesians, he really goes after Keynes. Like it's not like everyone in our circles knows Keynes was a despicable pedophile and a hedonist and all these terrible things. But for a mainstream book, just to be openly saying it was like a shock to me. And I really enjoyed it because I was like, yes, everyone needs to know Keynes was a pedophile who would travel the country just to be a pedophile.
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember that was one thing that I remembered the first time I read it. I was like, oh, wow, this is some like, like heated criticism. He was, Seyfedin was just on Lex Friedman or whatever. Yeah.
It's actually what led me to buying the book was that interview.
Yeah. And there's like that disclaimer at the start of the video that's like, some of the ideas are extreme, like be warned. And it's like,
and it's so funny because Lex had Paul Krugman on, and
hear
like him trying to defend Krugman and Seyfedin just not having any of it was absolutely hilarious.
It is pretty funny the hatred for Paul Krugman. I was meeting with this investing, like I won't go into details, but this guy in the investing world, and we were talking about, and he said he was like a former libertarian, and he's like, oh, I'm still fully free market, don't get me wrong, like if I saw Paul Krugman in the street, I'd run him over with my truck, and like and he's like, I'd go to jail, like I'd take it. And that was like, I was like like I didn't even mention Paul Krugman. I was like, wow, I found like my people, I guess.
I love that. Like I didn't know who Krugman was, so I started listening to Contra Krugman. I came to Libertarians after it ended. Like I said, so once I found out, I started like rewatching all of them because they're on like Castbox and like podcasting apps. I had found out recently, apparently Tom Woods, like not only would him and Murphy do a weekly show going after Krugman, apparently Tom would fax the transcript of the episode to Krugman.
I didn't know that part. That's great.
I don't know if that's true, but I heard a few people saying that. I saw like a few posts about it. I'm like, is that true? Because like that's just baller.
Yeah, it is interesting looking back in that era, like Bob Murphy and Krugman would like do back and forths a moderate amount. Like I kind of wish that was still happening.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you knew the story of, I think Bob Murphy's fans wrote like rose like $100,000 for them to debate, and then Paul Krugman was like, no, I'm not going to debate you. And it's like,
oh, that's just sad. I would have loved to have seen that debate. The only time I've seen him debate was he debated Ron Paul, who's not even an economist, and Ron Paul still.
Yeah, I was like, of course you debate the guy who's like not even an economist.
It's still loose. Yeah. It was hilarious. I loved it. Yeah. But I think his point about how not Krugman or Murphy, but Seyfedin's point that the Keynesians have to push the Federal Reserve to put money because that's how they get paid. Reminded me of our recent live stream we did on Hopper's intellectuals in the States.
Yeah.
They believe they're worth more when they actually get paid in the free market, so they have to get the reign of power and then literally being called the people, pushing the people to create money that then funds their own ego. They are literally inflating their own ego.
Yeah, it is interesting to think about like what are the incentives of these people? Like, do they really believe what they're saying? Is it just corruption and money? It's very, very interesting to think about this sort of thing. Like, how are their so many people like in academia like believing these things. It's interesting.
Yeah,
makes you think.
Just give me one moment. Sorry, it's a work thing. So I normally power that phone off, but I got a work situation going, so I'm trying to. Yeah. Let me just mark this up here quick. So let's get into Bitcoin. Let's get into the whole point of the podcast, Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin?
Well, it was created in 2008 by a synonymous coder, Satoshi Nakamoto. It was a long progression of internet money. There was a lot of different, I think there was like BitGold, some other stuff in the late 90s, early 2000s. What's cool is some of the people that worked on those original ones are like still in the Bitcoin space today, like Adam Back, people like that. And it was basically the first, online currency to succeed that was trustless. So basically, like without a trusted third party, people would be able to transact with each other natively digitally. So like it was confirmed on the network and settled on the network. And that's why in the white paper, which he published when it came out, it was like peer-to-peer electronic cash was like the catchphrase, which, people like Sal, we could go into like the whole debate of Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash. I don't know if you know Sal Mayweather. He's really into Bitcoin Cash. It's kind of interesting. I don't know why.
I love that. I've had one on the show. I absolutely love Sal. He's Sal on podcast is amazing. Sal on Twitter is someone I've muted. But you never get to talk to Sal. He's a fun dude, and he's so much nicer on like podcasts. It's kind of funny.
That's funny. Yeah, I'll like his memes, and then I see like him saying something about Bitcoin, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and then I'll just like all the people that are ratioing him, and that's all I
do. One of the things I think the reason Bitcoin is a solid money is one of the important factors of money is that it has to be one divisible, and it has to be either difficult to obtain or have a limited amount. Otherwise, it's just going to grow and inflate and have all these problems, which is why gold has been a good money because it takes work to get and it's divisible. It has multiple uses. Bitcoin is I think Bitcoin is the first ever example of money where there's literally a set cap. It cannot be more Bitcoin.
Yeah, that was like a pretty ingenious thing, especially done digitally. And it is interesting because he goes over the history basically of how each money, eventually a harder money, either technology was discovered that could drastically increase the supply or a harder money overtook it. And I mean, he doesn't like make the conclusion directly, but basically like that's what's going to happen to gold is kind of, what's interesting is he wrote this book in 2018. And I think he was more like, he definitely had a positive view of Bitcoin, but he was more like balanced. Like he saw pros and cons of gold and Bitcoin. I mean, I think he's still it's interesting for how like aggressively he writes. He still is pretty like a balanced thinker, I would say.
This is impressive to be that aggressive sometimes, but still have like your balance, try to be unbiased. I'm like, I'm not on the whole Bitcoin train. I have Bitcoin. I'm not one of those like, Bitcoin maximalists or hardcore Bitcoin guys. And I was kind of like turned off by Saifedean on like Twitter and stuff. Like, I don't know if I really want to get deep into like this. He seems like a code of personality type dude. That's his Lex Friedman podcast. And he made a Hopper argument for monarchy to Lex Friedman. I was kind of like, okay, this guy is someone I need to actually pay attention to. And I started like watching this podcast. He was on Human Action podcast. I read his book. Yeah, I'm a fan of his. He definitely is a very interesting and impressive character. I'm a fan.
Yeah, he gets like, some people can be turned off by some of the things he does, but he's definitely like a powerful person, and like, he's influenced me a lot. I think like half the articles I've written, I like him, like use him as my main source. I don't know why that's happened, but it's just
my first time I heard about this book, my neoliberal friend read the book, and when I got the book, I texted him like, "Hey man, I got the Bitcoin standard book. What were your thoughts on it?" He's like, "It's an interesting book. It goes through a lot of your Austrian nonsense you love to talk about." The guy seemed like an asshole, and I had a hard time finishing the book because I really hated him. And I'm like, I want to love it. I'm gonna love this guy, aren't I? And I do. I read the book.
If you go to the Amazon reviews, it's like that. It'll be like 1 star. This is like propaganda. He's just, and then the next is 5 stars. Like, you need to read this. It's gonna change your world. There's like a lot of books like that though,
Yeah.
where it's just like one. Yeah, it's pretty funny, these polarizing topics.
Oh yeah. So let's see. We talked about how Bitcoin can be divisible. We talked about how it's only one. Let's talk about like how Bitcoin is used. Like it seems to be it's a digital currency that can be used, and it kind of I think what we use it solves the problem of space time. Or was that Nick Land? Like Nick Land's articles on Bitcoin. Something I tried to read them like twice today.
I didn't actually know he's that's interesting.
Nick Land has like one article called "Bitcoin solves the problem of space time," and he had one article that said Bitcoin is from the future.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love I love Nick Land. I hate reading Nick Land. And so I've tried to read his Bitcoin stuff, and it's just it's bonkers.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bitcoin seems to solve the problem of not space time, but like the issue of like what's the word to use? Scalability across space and time. No.
Yeah. So that kind of goes back. I think I'm trying to remember. There's like in the literature, there's like 5 properties of money, which we kind of went over. It's like divisibility, durability, it's like transportability, and then I forget like scarcity, and then I forgot what the 5th one is. Like something about being homogeneous. I don't remember, but that kind of goes into it's like salability across space, which is like transporting it, salability across time, which is being durable and scarce, because otherwise the value won't hold theoretically. And then salability across scale, which is like the whole divisibility thing. So I think he makes the argument, and he does it more in his second book as well, that gold has salability across time, fiat has salability across space, and Bitcoin is kind of like the one that is like basically has both. Like it is a scarce asset that also, is inexpensive to transport.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the positive features you would look for in what a currency would be, Bitcoin seems to hit all of them, which I think was basically the guy who made it either really knew economics or really knew money, or just got really lucky.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely seems like he knew what he was doing.
I think he definitely knew economics. I know Hal Finney, who's like he's like basically a co-creator, and people speculate if he was Satoshi. He like cites like George Selgin and people like that. So it is interesting. It seems to have more of like a Hayekian roots in some ways, but I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I guess I don't know if it works.
If it does the job, it does the job.
Yeah.
Let's see what's another thing to come about with Bitcoin. Let's talk about the hate Bitcoin gets, because Bitcoin gets a lot of hate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't fully understand why. I get the environmental argument. I don't get, but the argument that bugs me the most, I think, is probably the one like Bitcoin is used by criminals, therefore no one should ever use it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like people buy drugs with cash. It's like
I heard that argument more back in like 2020. I think with the recent bull market from like 10K to 60K to wherever it is right now, I think it kind of has switched a bit to more like speculation issues or currency stability issues, or like you said, environmental. But I do remember when I was getting into it, people would complain about the criminality of it. It is interesting. The network is synonymous but not anonymous, meaning that all the networks or all the transactions are broadcasted. You just don't know who is who. So it's not like you can do forensic analysis of transactions, and there are people working on like privacy in the space. It is an interesting like trade-off, like privacy versus basically being able to verify that everything is going right.
Yeah. It's the argument they make was like it's unstable or something, or the it seems like a lot of people I noticed who make the argument against Bitcoin, all these monetary problems they think they claim Bitcoin has, but they immediately say the pro like US dollar, like they don't. I've never seen a person attack Bitcoin who wasn't an NPC.
Yeah, and then you have like your gold bugs that are kind of like salty about, having like an asset do better than gold.
I think we mentioned his name. We
Spectacularly.
mentioned his name earlier, but we want to say it
Yeah,
again.
there's a couple people I won't name names other than him who I already named. Which I understand. I mean, when I heard about Bitcoin, I thought all the people in it were really like douchey, just like these guys just like want to get rich quick. I don't know. I think value investors have a natural hatred towards it, but also they don't like gold. So if you don't like gold, you're not going to like Bitcoin. You're probably not going to like Bitcoin because they're not inherently productive assets, as in they don't generate cash flow. Like if you invest in a business, that's something you own, but it's generating money. Whereas Warren Buffett likes to say gold's just a piece of like a rock. So I'm not surprised that people like Warren Buffett don't like Bitcoin. And then there's the gold people that say, "Oh, it's nothing. Like Bitcoin is nothing. Like you can't." It is interesting, those arguments. I don't feel like they hold up that well. And then there's also like the regression theorem people point to, which is like Mises's idea. I don't know if I forget if it's mentioned in this book. I think it is briefly.
Maybe if you could elaborate on that, maybe I don't think I've heard a little bit on that. You would.
Yeah. So Mises's regression theorem, I think in Money and Credit, his 1912 book. Basically, he's saying, how does money get its value? Because there's no inherent reason a gold ounce should be worth, I don't know, $50 worth of purchasing power versus 100. And his idea is that the starting price of a money is based on its commodity value. So gold, like in a community, say it's trading for like 5 sheep, like an ounce of gold trades for like 5 sheep or like 2 cows. And that's like the use value before gold is treated as money. So that's kind of like the base value. And it's basically as it's accepted as a medium of exchange, more people are willing to pay more for it because it has the inherent flexibility of being accepted. So then the price can rise, but it's rising from that base level of like its original value. So it has like an inherent value. And I think Saifedean argues that Bitcoin's inherent value is the fact that it is a network ledger that can work internationally. So like people are willing to pay, a penny for a Bitcoin because they're able to, record a transaction with someone else. Like it's basically like an international bookkeeping ledger. And then from there it can gain value. Yeah. But the weird thing I'd say about the regression theorem, and I think Bob Murphy says this, is well, the regression theorem says that if it doesn't have a starting, or like the gold bug interpretation of it says that if something doesn't have a starting commodity value, it can't have a value. But Bitcoin has a value. People are buying it for $30,000 a coin. So your explanation doesn't line up with what actually happened. Like it basically, if what gold bugs are saying is true about the regression theorem, Bitcoin couldn't have a price, but it has a price. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, first time I ever really got into the whole like Bitcoin thing was like I was at a gun store. I'm playing the story because it's gonna actually be a segue into a whole point about it. And there are these. I'm grabbing my gun off. I'm getting a scope attached to it, and these old boomers are just arguing about like why Bitcoin is terrible, and they're just arguing about it. And I decided to like pipe up and say something like Bitcoin's better than gold. I don't know anything about economics. This is before I read Mises. And so I was just like, fuck it, why not? And this guy's like, with gold, I have it on me. If I want, I can carry it. With Bitcoin, they cut off the internet. You don't have any money. And I was like, if the government walks up to your house, take your gold, which they've done in the past, how much gold can you carry? It's me. All I have to do is remember my passcode.
Yeah.
I can travel with it more than you can travel with your hoards of gold. Well, I think it's an interesting point. I think I saw a lot of algorithms are into Bitcoin because one, the synonym, how it's as a ledger, but also is more like anonymous, and the fact that it is much more movable. Like it's easy. It's so much. It's like not even comparable. Like moving gold versus moving someone with Bitcoin.
Yeah, and that also there's the whole debate within the Bitcoin space of like transaction volume, because Bitcoin, basically how it works is that every single transaction is verified by every single node, which is basically just like a computer that stores the entire ledger. But since it's a blockchain, it's like blocks of every transaction all the way back to 2009. So you can only fit a certain amount of transactions in each block, meaning that Bitcoin's limited to like 500,000 transactions a day on the entire network. So that's not scalable to, or like on the base layer, it's not scalable to the entire world, which goes into an interesting question of like scalability, and that's like a legit concern. And Bitcoin Cash is basically like I feel like I'm going a bit in the weeds, but it's basically what some people like is it's basically a copy of Bitcoin that is larger block sizes, so it can fit more transactions, but it sacrifices security to do that. It is like the most simple trade-off explanation.
That makes sense. It seems like I can see why some people would choose that one over say Bitcoin, regular Bitcoin, or go Bitcoin Cash because of that those benefits. Honestly, I don't know. I went out of my notes. I have like a page here, and I've already went out of like notes for because we just kind of like gone through everything about it. Anything you want to say about Bitcoin before we kind of just like vamp and find something to talk about?
Well, I mean, if you have like technical questions, let me see if you can think of anything, I can try to talk about it. I think
what is a blockchain? I still don't fully understand that.
Yeah, so basically it is a bunch of nodes which are just like computers running the same algorithm, and they're basically finding a way to find consensus. So there's the whole system of nodes will send out transactions, and then miners will basically do it's so dumb when you explain it without like going into the science, because it's basically miners doing hard math problems to kind of verify that those coins are where the nodes say they are. And then if everything seems good, then they're sent and then bundled into a block, which is just like a set of transactions. And then every 10 minutes, the blockchain is updated with the new set of transactions. So say I want to send you 1 Bitcoin for something. I'll go to my node, which we just use at our phone at this point, and be like, okay, I send your address 1 Bitcoin. That goes into the ether. Basically, miners check to make sure that my account actually has the balance I say I have. And then once they confirm that's true, they confirm the transaction that 1 Bitcoin moved from my wallet to your wallet. And then that is stuffed in a block, and then that is like added to the permanent ledger. So it is interesting that basically Bitcoin setup kind of makes it more suited for like a reserve asset status than like cash, like paying. Like you're not going to be paying for like chips on the main network, which is what some people have a problem with. There are scaling solutions though, like Lightning, which is basically like a layer 2 where it's basically like a bunch of IOUs set up that only transfer on the main network every once in a while. So you lose a little security and finality, but if it's like under like $1,000, it's worth doing because there's transaction fees on the network to pay the miners.
Okay, actually, it makes sense to me. I actually got it finally. Thank you. What is the security? I know I have some people who talk to me. I bring up Bitcoin. They're like what's the word here? Like cybersecurity engineering types, and they say blockchains aren't secure. Like they're not secure. So like, what is the security of the blockchain? Like how does the blockchain have security protection? Like how does that operate?
I'd say that the blockchain itself, specifically Bitcoin, because it prioritizes security, which is one of the reasons I could see it as a reserve asset, because like you couldn't have a reserve asset if any of the transactions could be faulty. But it's very slow and clunky, but prioritizes security. I'd say blockchain is very safe. Everything we know, there's a thing called a 51% attack, but it doesn't destroy the network. It just stops it. Basically, if someone controls more than 50% of the network's mining power, which is just like, like it used to be graphics cards. Now it's like specific like pieces of computer hardware that like do these like mathematical formulas to confirm transactions, then they can send in faulty transactions over and over again. But nodes, which are like the ones confirming, can be like, oh, we see this doesn't follow the protocol, therefore we're not going to accept it. But then it like basically screws up the network until the network can be over 50%, or basically more of the network needs to be legitimate than fraudulent. So that kind of is the importance of decentralization, is if 1 million people are all running software, you would need a huge force to even get close to that. And that's why it's in blockchain, it's kind of a winner's take all, because any network other than Bitcoin is less secure because it has less power securing it. So it makes more sense for people to go to Bitcoin because it's the most secure, which in theory pushes up the price, and the price kind of incentivizes people to secure it. So yeah, I mean, you could screw with it. Bitcoin has never been 51% attacked. Smaller blockchains have been. I think for Bitcoin, it would be like $15 billion every, like, I forget if it's like monthly, and that would just delay the network. And in theory, nodes could just like blacklist the fraudulent miners. And then, so it is an interesting thing. I think more of the security concern is on the user end, which is how people, get screwed out of their coins. Cause there's never been, like fraudulent transaction on the network itself. It's just with people getting like their keys stolen, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I heard a story about a guy who like had his key on his computer and like he missed his rent or something, and the landlord threw all his stuff in a dump, and now he's just like going through the dump trying to find his computer so he can get the key, so he can get the Bitcoin. I'm like, listen, Bitcoiners, if you have Bitcoin and you're not paying your rent, you have a problem.
Well, yeah, it is interesting. Back in like the 2011 era, everyone just stored Bitcoin on their computer, but they didn't have like the password for it. It was just on the computer. So if you lose the computer, you like literally lost the Bitcoin. And security's gotten, or not security, more like storage has gotten way more sophisticated because now it's actually valuable. There's tons of stories about people that like dabbled in it and just like lost track of it. So it's interesting to think how many, I think the estimate's like 2 to 3 million coins are lost. And that's out of the 21 million total. So it's actually closer to like 18 million. Which is interesting.
That's interesting.
Apparently, this guy, Max Kaiser, I think is his name, gave Alex Jones a laptop with 50,000 Bitcoin on it or something crazy, maybe 10,000. But it would be like over $1 billion now. And Alex Jones just lost it. It was like over a decade ago. Like there's a clip of Alex Jones talking like, this guy just gave me like 10,000 Bitcoins and I didn't know what they were and I just lost them. And then it's just like, oh my God.
If he loses that, when he has to pay up for that court case he lost, sadly, he was going to go into his attic and like, where is it? Just trying to find it. I'm bankrupt. I declare bankruptcy. It didn't move somewhere. It's gonna be an amazing story. I had a point. I said I wrote it down. Give me a moment. I had a question I was going to ask. Give me a moment. It's not coming back to me. It's not going.
Maybe it'll come back to you later.
I hope it comes back to me because I remember really wanted to bring that point up, and now it's gone. Shit coins. That's what it was. Let's talk about shit coins for a little bit. Saved it. So there are a lot of shit coins. Dogecoin. Apparently Ethereum is considered a shit coin. I have like 25. I have like $25 of crypto.com cryptocurrency because it came free with my account.
Nice.
I don't know what to do with it. I tried to sell it, but
it's probably like $1 now.
I want to sell it. And it's like it'd be $50. Like, I have to have over 50 to sell. And I'm like, I'm not buying more of this shit coin, so I can sell it for $1. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
So it's just gonna sit there forever and never be touched. But like, what are some shit coins, and why is Bitcoin? Why are all other cryptocurrencies considered by most Bitcoiners to be shitcoin? Like, what is the difference here between Bitcoin and shitcoins?
So I think there's like several levels of Bitcoiners. I mean, there's people into crypto, which means they're basically into everything. Bitcoin is generally the largest holding of cryptos just because it's just the most secure, and people consider it like the boring, stable for how volatile Bitcoin is, people in the crypto space consider it like the like the volatile asset in some ways. It's just kind of depressing to think about. You have people that are like Bitcoin mostly, basically like, oh, I think Bitcoin's the best, but there's altcoins that have utility. Then there's Bitcoin maximalists who are like, Bitcoin is the only good one. Everything else is a scam. Everything else is going to zero. Everything else is terrible. I mean, I'm in between the second and third one.
And it is like the fourth level is Nick Land, which thinks Bitcoin is from the future and solves the problem of space, time, and travel.
Yeah, and then there's the people that think like everything else is like a CIA operation to try to take down Bitcoin, and it's like,
listen, I love Bitcoiners on Twitter. I don't talk to them. I'm scared, but I love to like watch them do things.
Yeah, it's
like,
interesting.
Of course, my favorite Bitcoiner is a Narco Canadian. Like that guy, that guy's great. He's agreed to come on once he ever actually gets his own recording equipment. I asked him like 6 months ago. I mean, that guy's great on stuff. But like, I know Dogecoin. I don't know about cryptocurrency. I know about Dogecoin. And I know a YouTuber Cody did a video where he just talked about shit coins, pretty much. Like he talked about like there's a cum coin, there's a nipple coin, there's all these really crazy.
Yeah, it is one of the things that made me not like the space at first. But I guess I can find some solace in the fact that being a Bitcoin maximalist, like you kind of avoid that stuff. But to some extent, the industry is like pulled down by like the degeneracy and silliness and like over leverage of like speculation. So it is interesting. It feels like the Wild West of like, I believe in Bitcoin, but there's very uncomfortable things that I wish weren't around the space, but just because it's a fringe thing that's going to kind of happen.
Yeah. I almost thought about making a currency of a cryptocurrency for automism. It's called the Aquinas coin or something.
Did you see like Miami coin? Oh my gosh, the Miami guy Suarez made like Miami coin, and it's just like down like 99%. Most altcoins are just like a copy and paste of the Bitcoin code with some changes, and people are like, "Oh, what's the value in Bitcoin if you could just copy it?" Well, I mean, first of all, there's network effects. Why would people move? There's like the amount of energy put into the current Bitcoin network, and all of the holders are incentivized to stay on the main chain, which is interesting. I was going to say something else. And then like basically like what Seyfriedin talks about in this book, that money is kind of like a winner takes all, because why would you have the second best money when the whole point of money is to be the most universal thing? So, you know, like something like Dogecoin, like people will buy it hoping it goes up. But at the end of the day, there's no reason for there to be two coins, and which one is going to win. It makes more sense for the one that's established and actually has holders and is like established and secure.
Looks to me like Bitcoin is how I put this. Bitcoin is a currency from another look, like, you know, like just compare as US dollar, it's like Canadian dollar, that kind of stuff. Bitcoin looks like to me, when I look at this kind of out of perspective, Bitcoin is another currency you're just trading your money for. Why altcoins and shitcoins are just like stock market when you invest in something, you're hoping it goes up.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. And there are, I think I would differentiate between coins that are literally just a copy and paste of Bitcoin with coins that are trying to be utility based. When Ethereum was made in like 2012, Vitalik said, "Oh, Bitcoin is gold, Ethereum is oil," like the two commodities, because you basically burn Ethereum to do stuff like smart contracts and NFTs and all that stuff is on the Ethereum network. So basically, my opinion is, okay, Ethereum is way more complicated than Bitcoin. I don't like that it's way more centralized than Bitcoin. It doesn't function nearly as well as a money if there's controllers changing it. And also I'm like, okay, well, if it does something useful, why do the coins need value? You know what I mean? So like there can be a piece of technology, but the technology doesn't need a natively digital coin. It's like kind of like casino chips. Like casino chips don't have value. They just are exchanged for real money. So it's like similarly, why couldn't Ethereum be denominated in Bitcoin at some point? You know what I mean? Like obviously it would be great for the holders of Ethereum if it went up in price, but that's like mostly it. But yeah, I think there are some interesting projects in, crypto space. This whole, I don't know if you saw the whole like Terra Luna USD, like a stable coin collapsed. There's like this Luna coin or something that lost like $40 billion in value. Pretty impressive. Which kind of is what is putting Bitcoin down so much right now.
I've noticed. I've been checking in. It's like, come on.
Yeah, I got some friends into the hype back a while ago, and the texts I get are like, should I sell when it's falling? And I'm like, they're always asking, should I sell? And I'm like, oh man. I was like, I didn't give the financial advice. But...
Immediately sends like the financial advice disclaimer, just sends the text.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's I saw a debate recently, and it was on I was on a Line for Liberty channel. It was on like, should Bitcoin be used as a savings? Was basically how I use it. I don't invest in Bitcoin like eventually use in the future when I use it as a saving mechanism. I know it's gonna hold value better than the if I just store cash under my bed kind of thing. Which I think is an important part of Bitcoin is that what's inflation, this fiat money inflation are pushing low high time. Which one is the bad one again? High time preference or low time preference?
Well, technically, it's not. Economics is not a normative science.
Okay,
so.
Technically, which one is the fat? Which one is fat?
High time preference is what we make fun of.
Okay.
Low time preference is cool.
God,
I'm going to confirm. My bio says low time preference individual.
There we go. Mine wants to say high time preference. Only way I keep track of it, I know like some Zim bros who say the low time preference. I'm like, that's why I keep track.
Yeah.
It seems like because fiat money and inflationary, it's like it all inspires and encourages high time preference behavior because it is like, hey, this money is not going to be here forever. You have to spend it now, or you're not going to have any value. Which I know I am like guilty of. It's why I like have my money in Bitcoin because it's just a hassle for me to sell it. I don't fully trust that I'm actually going to get it back. And I know that I'm not, if I need like money for a sandwich, I'm not going to sell off Bitcoin for a sandwich.
Yeah.
So it is a savings mechanism for myself. This is not financial advice. I'm going to have to put that, I'm going to have to edit a disclaimer into this, honestly. This is not financial advice. But I use it as a saving mechanism because I know that it's at least going to hold its value better than my US dollar does my bank account.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's definitely not, I forget where it's put out, but basically like the four forms of like 4 stages of money. It's like first it's a collectible, then it's a store of value, then it's a medium of exchange, then it's a unit of account. So collectible is just when it's something cool, but you don't consider it like as a savings mechanism. So like if it's a digital token that is fixed that you can send across the world, that's pretty cool. Like I would buy some just to have. Store of value is probably where it is now, where people see it as something that will be desirable in the future because it's like a unique network that is fixed. So whenever someone in the future will have like a desire to basically flee to a complete certain. Are you there?
Yeah. Okay. My internet's going out again. Go ahead and say that sentence over again, and we'll do plugs because I don't want to lose the stream.
Okay, that sounds good. What was I saying?
We talking about saving Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin's currently like in the store of value where people see it as, I think down the road people will still value it. And that is the question because, at the end of the day, money is relying on other people's valuations in the future. That's why I don't think the volatility argument is that good because it's 13 years old. Like it's going to be volatile. Like
it's old enough for Keynes.
Yeah, if you look at the volatility of gold as it gets monetized, you see something similar. Like it's still in monetization phases. Like people are buying and selling it. People are running away, greeting back in. So volatility is to be expected. I'd say it's still in the phases where it's like a hedge. Like I think this is has a high chance of being considered valuable or an asset in the future. Therefore, I'm going to buy it now. And then with that comes the expectations of volatility because it's such a new, unique thing, kind of.
Absolutely. Well, guys, it's been a book club on the Bitcoin Standard by Safer Dana Moose. I absolutely recommend this book. I really enjoyed it. It's on
You
Audible.
can
And
get
you
it from
back.
Mises.org as well.
Oh, awesome. I wish I knew that beforehand. I got it for Amazon. I don't know. He's on Twitter currently, but the emo hopping guy, I'll post any pic of buying a book on Amazon, and he'll like comment a picture. Yeah, those books look nice, and he'll send me a link to the Mises Institute's book page. Like he keeps like one time I got a book and it was like the corner was bent. He's like, "Hey man, did I wrap your book badly?" Like he's just constantly he's like checking on the books and stuff. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's great to know someone in the warehouse.
Yeah. Anyway, man, thanks so much for coming on. I always enjoy having you on. You're a really smart guy. What are your plugs? Where can people find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Hagefish. I write some stuff. I post stuff. If you're looking for more info on Bitcoin, I'm not the best tech guy, so I'd recommend Mastering Bitcoin by Andreas Antonopoulos if you want like the tech side, because I'm into finance and econ. I'm not a computer science guy, so I just like, so if you're interested in learning more about that, that's where I'd go. Yeah, that's it. Just Twitter for now.
I believe you had a recent article published as well.
Yeah, I just published something for the Hopian, which was fun to do.
Nice. Love those guys.
Yeah, great place.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's been an episode of Face in Practice. This is the 99th episode. So tomorrow night will be the 100th episode live stream. So it's 12 hours long. I got a lot of great stuff planned. It's going to be a lot of fun. But anyway, like, comment, share, subscribe, go to the Patreon. Yeah, have a good night.